I'm Pace Webb, chef and lifestyle expert based in Los Angeles, California, and I'm going to show you how to make a delicious steak. Click the link in the description to download the recipe so you can follow along and cook with me. I use no fancy rubs, just a little salt and pepper, a little bit of olive oil. Very simple because we're using delicious, high quality steak. Steaks are a very special treat, and I want to set you up for success so you can make them at home just like you're at some fancy restaurant. All right, let's start with the equipment that you need. Basically, a saute pan. So I've got an old ass cast iron skillet that's been in my family forever. And then I think this is like an all-clad pan. Yeah, an all-clad saute pan. I've had this Old Faithful around for a while. What you don't want to use is a non-stick pan because it's just not going to conduct the right type of heat that you need to get that really nice crust onto your the outside of your steak. Pair of tongs. Real simple tongs. I prefer the ones that don't have the plastic here, but totally up to you. Those plastic ones are really to protect a pan like the non-stick pans from being scratched by unprotected tongs like this, but we're not using non-stick pan, so it doesn't matter. And then a thermometer. Digital is best. I find like the old school analog ones just take a little too long to read and you have to really like look at it and be like, is it going? Is it stopping? And the digital are much faster and much easier to read. So it really doesn't take a lot to just make a steak in a pan. In terms of the ingredients, like I said, we're not trying to get super fancy. I'm not trying to impress you with my seasonings and sauces this go around. So I've chosen a nice high quality New York strip steak. And I've salted one for a couple of hours just so we can do a flavor comparison of like a little salting beforehand and then just salting a la minute, which means right before we put it into the pan. And the salt I'm using is this omnivore salt that I really love, and it's just a combination of like chili flakes, fennel, black pepper, and salt, but literally you could just use salt and pepper and it'd be all good, but seasoning it is really important. And that's pretty much all you need. A little bit of olive oil, or it could be a canola oil, neutral oil, to get on some high heat and saute. All right, so let's say you're at the grocery store and you're like, ooh, okay, time to make a fancy steak. But then you see all these different cuts and all these different options, and then certainly a huge variety of price points. You're like, how do I know what to pick up? All right, so let's run through some of the more common varieties. So skirt steak, it's kind of thin. It's like a flap and long. And that's typically good, let's say if you wanted to make a roulade, right? So that would be something that you would roll, like spinach, mushrooms, you would roll it up in there. That'd be really good because it's really thin like this. It's also great for tacos, and it's really thin, so it likes to be grilled at super high heat for a short period of time so it doesn't get overcooked. So I would not say that would be your like fancy, impressive steak, but that's what it would be really good for. Next is flank steak. Super affordable and certainly quite a bit thicker than the skirt steak I was just mentioning. But it's not ever as tender as I want it to be, but it's really good to feed a large group of people, relatively inexpensive. And so you would just cook it all as one piece, great on the grill, maybe not quite as super fast and high heat as a skirt steak because it's a little bit thicker, but season it with anything you want to, and then you let it rest. And you do have to slice the entire steak into really thin pieces. So again, it's great for a large group and for sharing, and it's a bit more of an affordable option. It's just not quite as tender as I like to enjoy my steak. Next up is a New York strip steak, and that's what I've got here because that's my favorite and that's what I want to make for you today, and that's what speaks to me as my love language when it comes to steak. And it's got this really nice marbling throughout, and you may think, well, that's not very healthy for you if you're, a health person. But really, it's not like you taste it. It's just permeates into the meat and melts because that's what fat does, and fat equals flavor, and it's really, really great. And this steak is from the short loin of the cow, okay? And then we have filet mignon. And you may be thinking, well, that's the piece de resistance of the meat. Well, I've got a different opinion. So it is so incredibly tender because it's right there on the top of the back of the cow, which gets very little movement. So it just doesn't have a lot of fat in it. And it's very, very lean and very tender. Okay, so the shape is sort of like a long tube that's fat in the middle and then tapers off to get skinnier on the outsides. Fun fact, the center part cut is the most desirable cut. It's called the Chateaubriand, which is in French, and it just refers to that center cut right there because it cuts so nicely. Let's say you get down here and it's just these kind of smaller, wimpier pieces of steaks. That's typically a more desirable cut right there. But again, it's just a little lean and it always leaves a little more to be desired for me. And it is the most expensive cut. So it just doesn't add up or make sense for me. So this isn't much cheaper, but it still is a little bit cheaper. And it's got all those lovely little fat bits in it. And it's going to taste really, really great. All right, so now it's time to start cooking, and we'll do a fun little side-by-side experiment here so we can start to see how the steak does with cast iron and how it does with stainless. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put them here on the burner and turn them on. These are really thick steaks, probably thicker than you might be used to seeing. So we're not gonna blast the heat super high. We're gonna put it on about a medium to medium high because they're gonna need to cook all the way through. And don't worry, if it starts to get that really nice color on the outside and you go, boy, this is still not reaching my internal temp I need, no problem. The great thing about these, you can just put them right in the oven as is. You don't need to transfer the dishes or anything. All right, so let's turn on the cast iron here. And we're gonna let those get hot. And you notice I didn't put anything in the pan, and what we're looking for is a hot, dry pan first before we add any of the fat in to start searing the steak. And so this one, as I mentioned, has been salted about 2 hours ago. And we're gonna see the flavor difference of a steak that you can salt ahead of time, as opposed to one that we're just gonna season kind of right in the moment. So I'll go ahead and season the steak now. So this is really important, okay? A lot of times people are like, oh, why can't I have this delicious steak at home? You can. Steak is actually, once you get it down, it's really simple to make. But you do need some basic techniques, and one of them is seasoning the steak. All right? So you basically want to make sure you're coating it completely with seasoning like this. Really, really liberally. Okay? This is not a time to be shy with seasoning. All right. And then you can turn it over sort of on all sides. So it's going to end up getting seared on all sides. Great. Steak makes me happy. So see how liberally I salted the meat and how thoroughly? That's definitely what you want to do to get all the flavor you can. Because fun fact about salt, well, a couple of fun facts about salt. I love it. That's not a fact. Is that it's actually only 40% sodium and 60% chlorine. Who knew? So it's not like all it's cracked up to be bad for you. Obviously, cooking from scratch is way better for you. Where it really gets you is in those canned goods and preservatives. That's where it's really bad for you, and it's like crazy amounts of sodium. Definitely not good for you. Second fun fact is that it actually brings out the natural flavor in the food. So it makes everything taste just like you turn the volume up on the natural flavors of whatever it is that you're salting. All right, let's check our pans for heat. Oh, this is good. Okay, now I'm in a small space and my smoke alarm is really sensitive, and I'm sure yours might be as well. So to get ahead of that, we're gonna turn a fan on. So it might be a little noisy, but I have no problem speaking louder. All right, so now the pans are hot, and we're gonna add a little bit of olive oil here. There we go. And then immediately followed by the steak. Okay, so this will be the one. Oh, nice. That'll be the one that I literally just salted, right? That didn't have the 2-hour salting. And this one will have the more kind of partially cured one, okay? And put that in there. Really nice sounds right off the bat. I'm very happy with the heat and how it's going. So we're just gonna let it work its magic here, do its thing. Turn the heat down just a little bit past medium, in between medium and low, because these are really hot pans now. I've got them really nice and hot. But again, if you had a really thin piece of steak, you'd want to crank it up super high, and then the thicker the steak will go just a little bit lower on the heat so it has time to cook all the way through. All right, so this one's looking, let's just check it out. That's really nice. We're gonna go ahead and turn that one over. Great, and let it get a nice crust on the other side. And then we'll start doing it on these sides as well. And this one, I would say, we're gonna let it keep doing its thing a little longer. It's not quite ready to turn that one over. All right, so take a look here. This guy's ready to turn over. That's a really beautiful color, don't you think? So now this one looks great on the other side. Now it's time to start doing the sides. Steak's gonna look awesome. Just gonna let it hang out there for a minute. Now this is real dedication here. Holding it up right just so that it sears nicely on all sides. Good. Nice. And now we go again right here. Getting there. Nice. Now let's just take a little gauge here and see what our internal cooking temperature is. My hunch is that it's still quite raw on the inside and needs a little oven time, whereas this guy's cooking a little slower in the cast iron and probably won't need some cooking time, but let's see how far off we are here. 145 is what we're looking at and we're looking for, and so we're quite a ways off there, so we're going to pop this in the oven now. All right, so look at that crust on the other side. It's almost there. And now let's see what this one's temperature is like. Okay, so almost about the same. So Brian, you're gonna do the same with that one. Really nice crust on the outside. Flip it on over. All right, so this one's got color on all sides, and we're gonna pop it in the oven to finish cooking as well. It's about 100 degrees, so we have a little ways to go. But we got a really nice crust on it, and that's the most important part. All right, meanwhile, Let's see what's happening here. Oh my gosh, it looks so pretty. Hello, you. Certainly making progress. We're going to take it out at 140, 145. So we've got just about 13, 15 degrees to go. All right, let's take a look. Now, it's been like 10 minutes on 400 degrees. So let's see what we got. I should do it. Good. All right, that takes us to like 140, 145 range. Awesome. So I'm gonna put that on the cutting board here, but we're gonna let it rest for 10 minutes. That's the rule, so that the blood redistributes the juices, if you will. And we have a juicy piece of steak, not a dry piece of steak. All right, so let this hang out for 10 minutes. You are beautiful. This lovely drippings juice, I inspire you to heat up some like ciabatta and dip that in there. We cannot let that go to waste. Do not throw this away. Meat juice. All right, and our other one should be ready any minute now. All right, let's check on the cast iron, buddy. See where it's at. Okay, 136 and climbing. That is good for me. Oh yeah, there we go. And let's let this one rest next to its buddy. And then we'll just wait 10 minutes and slice them up. All right, so I'm gonna do something a little bit off the plan because I'm looking at this meat juice and I didn't really make a plan for the meat juice, but I'll show you what I really would be doing anyway outside this video. So I keep some bread in the freezer. And I buy these like awesome fresh loaves of ciabatta bread from Whole Foods. Like, it's so good and doughy and soft. I'm shocked. Like, I look for good bread all over town. And so I get 2 loaves, chop them like this, slice them rather, and then I freeze them, and then I break them out when I need to, just to like have a little bit more starchy deliciousness. And that happens to be right now, because we're gonna sop up all this lovely meat pan juice with some awesome ciabatta bread. What do you say? Just throw a few pieces right here in the oven. It's already hot enough. It's been at 400 degrees for the steak, so we'll just kind of like put them in there and forget about it a little bit. All right, let's cut into the steak and see how well we did here. So we'll go with this one first, and it's been resting. This one was salted right before we sauteed it, and this one was made in the stainless steel saute pan, okay? All right, so let's do a little slice and see. Good. That crust is awesome, and it's like pretty delicious and perfectly cooked. So check that out. That's pretty much what you want to see from a tasty piece of steak. And I'm telling you, people are like, well, how do you tell? How do you tell? It's like, until you really get it down, you need to use the meat thermometer to really see where you're at, because the worst thing you could do is overcook it. And if you undercook it, you're like, oh, I got to put it back in. It's a pain in the butt and it cooks oddly. So that's really what you want to do. And plus, it depends on where you get your meat and who you get your meat from gets their meat, right? So in a professional setting, sometimes our purveyors will change their sources of who they're getting the meat from. It still meets our standards, but it's different. Different environment, different food, and it affects things so greatly you wouldn't believe it. Like, just when you think you're like, oh, I've totally got this hanger steak down, it's a moving target. So it never hurts to check the actual temperature here. Oh my gosh, this is so good. Do you want a bite? You want to try it? That's what I thought. So tasty. All right, so there's that guy right there, and let's see how we did here, and let's compare and see if there's a taste. This is cast iron skillet, And this was salted 2 hours in advance. So let's see if it truly is superior. Okay. Good. I'm going to arrange these out so I can show you sort of more up close what we're working with here. Okay. So let's do a taste test of the one that was a la minute first, okay? Tastes like steak. Very, very delicious. Let's see if I get anything different here. That makes me very happy. Now I want the bread. Slight difference. You could salt it for longer and leave it in the kitchen longer, but very good. Both of them are very good, but like I'm definitely getting like a little bit more flavor out of the one that was salted for a couple of hours before we cooked it. All right, let's check on our lovely little bread pieces here. I'm just gonna bring these pan drippings over and we're just gonna have a regular old snack. Oh yeah, nice and crispy. There we go. Oh, I love that sound. Isn't that nice? I'll just kind of sop it around in there. You see that? Oh, that's living, y'all. If you enjoyed the tutorial, like the video and subscribe to my channel. Leave comments, ask questions. I love to chat. Check out some of my other episodes and tutorials here. And if you want a complete list of the courses, visit www.tasteofpace.com.